Welcome back to Authentically Peculiar with Marcia. Y'all know how I feel about my guests. Y'all know that I ain't bringing nobody in that ain't got nothing to say, that's not going to be uplifting, that's not going to be passionate about the subject that we're talking about. So, yet again, TikTok strikes. I've been watching Officer Owens, I know, for at least a year. Don't do a lot of commenting, but I do a lot of liking. But when stuff step out to me, then it grabs me. And I wanted to bring her on so that we can have a real discussion about policing, her passion about policing, and all of the things that she does to enhance awareness in her community. So let me run down this bio real quick. Officer Owens, born and raised in Alabama, earning her bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Alabama at Birmingham in 2018. Oh, she a baby. A baby. In 2020, she began her career in law enforcement, got certified as a police officer in Mississippi. Then she went back home. 2022 is like, I got to go back to Bama. She is passionate about law enforcement. Provides her an opportunity to live her purpose, educating and interacting within the community, sharing her love for people from a different perspective, understanding and guiding people to know laws. I've seen her talk about different laws, what to do when you're stopped by the police, and just different things like that, because we need an insight. We need to understand. We need to understand that every police officer isn't our enemy. They are there for public service. So throughout her career, she has answered a variety of calls. We'll talk a lot about, even those mental health crises. As a mental health therapist, I got to talk about those crisis calls and what to do during traffic stops. It has led her to speak and meet with thousands of individuals who needed understanding, who needed education. She said she heard and seen, even smelled some unthinkable things. Listen, I can only imagine. So, from the mental health side, if we're in the hospital, we see some stuff. I can only imagine what you've had to experience. But it drives her passion for mental wellness and awareness. And her biggest accomplishment is the work that she does with the Alabama Law Enforcement Alliance for Peer Support. I love that because oftentimes we forget that when we are in a human service role, people forget that we're human. So thank you for your yes, Officer Owens, for joining me here today, and welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I feel blessed to even just be in your presence and have this opportunity. So thank you for your consideration and, just the opportunity to speak on these things is really important to me. So thank you.
I appreciate you. So let's get into it. First question. I know that you provided me with the background of your BA degree, but what got you into law enforcement?
So I've always known that I wanted to get in law enforcement.
Really?
My mom was a nurse, is a nurse. My grandmother was a nurse, and I knew I absolutely could not do anything medical. But bottom line, I mean, I've always been inquisitive. I've always wanted to know who did it, why they did it. My favorite thing to do was puzzles, riddles, anything like that.
Mm,
And so just putting those pieces together. So like I said, I've always knew what I wanted to do. I just didn't know what route I needed to take to get there.
got
And
you.
I finally got the opportunity to do it, and it's been great. I've had a great 5 years in law enforcement.
It's such a beautiful thing when you get into your purpose,
Yes.
right? Being able to have a vocation associated with your purpose. How does that feel knowing that I've always wanted to do and now I do it and I enjoy it?
I'm telling you, it's just like a constant sense of, accomplishment, really.
Mhm.
And just knowing that not only am I doing what I always thought I would be doing, but
Mhm.
in my opinion, I'm successful at doing it, and it's one of those
Yeah.
things where I'm not just out here doing something just for the sake of doing it, but I'm really
Mhm.
making a difference. I tell people my thing is every day I get up, I want to ask myself, especially when I'm putting that uniform on, how can I make an impact? Specifically, how can I make a positive impact? Because it's easy
Mm-hmm.
to spread negativity. You know, it's
Listen.
easy to make people mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
How
Mm-hmm.
can you positively impact them? And that's what I strive to do every day.
You know, that sounds so familiar to how I prepare myself every day. It's every morning I wake up, ooh, I'm grateful for another day. All right, who's going to be on my path that I'm supposed to help impact change in their life? That's huge when you're walking in your purpose and knowing that you are purpose. That's beautiful. I really, really do love that. And so as you think about educating the population about policing, what's driving you to do that?
I think just really giving them a different perspective of it, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because things happen, right?
Yeah.
Mistakes are going to be made again. Like we're all human, so it's not like we're exempt from error. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think just being able to give people an honest assessment and say, hey, the professional policing is not perfect. We make
Right.
mistakes. Some of the hate that we have truly earned, but some of
Mm-hmm.
it not so much.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's help each other. Let's bridge the gap. You tell me what you need from a police and, how I can better serve you. And
Mm-hmm.
then I give you the policing side of it and let you know, like, hey, here's what you can do whenever you have a situation occur. Here's how you can help me to help you and
Mm-hmm.
make sure that we both go home at the end of it. So,
I love that because a lot of times fear that spreads among the community is a guider on both sides because
right.
I'm certain that with the idea of even when the campaign of Back to Blue, Black Lives Matter, and all of that, there was a lot of fear, a lot of negative energy that was being exchanged, not recognizing that we could actually build community. How were you able to help others understand, especially when it's highly volatile situations that is changing the face of America? How do you help your community, one, embrace policing, two, the officers embracing the community? Where do you fit in there?
So I just try to spread positivity, and I don't know if you can tell, but I'm just a chill person.
Yeah.
Like this is my demeanor all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that it brings just like a sense of calm when I'm
Mm-hmm.
having conversations, or when I arrive on a scene, because if I go in at a 10, then that's gonna put everybody at a 10, right?
Absolutely.
So I
Absolutely.
try to bring that level of calm to it, so that way everybody can just take a breather and say, hey, like this is why we're here. This is what
Mm-hmm.
we need to accomplish. This is going to be the end result,
Mm-hmm.
and another huge factor for me is just communication, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people just want to know why,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so if you let them know and just put everything out there, a lot of times it makes situations a whole lot easier.
And you know, that's actually a move in psychology, right? We as therapists in any human service position, we recognize that we have to first own our own energy because and we'll talk a little bit about what it's like to go into a crisis situation. If we run into a crisis situation here, I'm gonna bring everybody else up to here. And oftentimes when I have people that are in critical situations, I'm gonna go down to a whisper because I know you got to stop to listen to me. And
Yeah.
so tell me what it's like in your experience when you've had to have a call for like a mental health welfare check or a crisis situation. What are some things that you have to run through your mind and some things that you can help the public to understand?
So initially, when dispatch give the calls out, we want to think about what dispatch knows, like what's the
Okay.
information that they give us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so let me just take a second to say huge shout out to all the dispatchers. Thank you so much for everything that you do for us. You
Yes.
are our lifeline, and without y'all, man, we would be screwed.
We walking in the dark,
Yep,
walking in the dark, and
so,
they don't get a lot of praise
right,
because I worked for the crisis line, for the VA crisis line. And although I'm not a dispatcher, I know what it's like for me to have to call for emergency services. And I'm very cautious and aware of what's my verbiage.
right.
Am I going to hype the situation up? So, yes, kudos, shout out to
Yeah.
all the 911 dispatchers, so taking those calls that are connected to the police departments. We love you and we appreciate you. But now that we got
For
that
sure.
shout out, go ahead, tell me about it.
For sure. So, just based off the information that they give us,
Mm-hmm.
going in, and anytime you're on your way to a call, you should be thinking about different avenues. If this happens, I'm going to do this. If this happens, I'll do this, right? Just giving yourself multiple plans. That
Mm-hmm.
way you can run through. And by doing that, it avoids the freeze up. All right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, you get on the scene and you just take into account what dispatch has told you and now what you see, and then you address it accordingly. So, if this is just, I hate to say it, like just a middle of a road situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
No weapons involved. It's just somebody that's having a mental crisis. Just approach that situation and basically let them know, hey, it can happen to any of us. Like this
Mm-hmm.
literally could be anybody at any moment, so let's take some time to talk about it. Once you get on a call, you got all the time in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
will say that's one thing about policing that kind of gets under my skin is when these guys get to a call and they want to rush it. Like, no, we're here.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
let's be in the moment. Let's get it sorted out. You still getting paid. Chill out. you
Right,
know,
right.
and so just kind of trying to meet them where they are to
Mm-hmm.
understand what they need and what can be next. Is that going to the hospital? Is that getting a family member to come on scene? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what the situation is that going to jail? Hopefully not.
Right,
If we
right.
can avoid that, but
Mm-hmm.
it could still be a possibility. But just trying to figure out how can I best help you, and
Yeah.
using my skill set to one get you to a level where you can receive it, but also
Mm-hmm.
being knowledgeable enough to provide you with resources.
Yeah. And you said something very powerful. And I hope as a community, as well as law enforcement individuals, listen to this podcast that your statement of you don't have to rush time
Yeah,
is huge because when you take it from that angle, you can calm a situation. And as you said before, a lot of people really just want to be heard and they
right,
want to be understood. But when you go in there with the bravado, I think that that changes everything about the incidents. I remember being pulled over by a rookie officer, and it was so funny. I had to laugh at myself because I know I made him nervous. Pulled over. I think I was 3 miles over the speed limit or something, and he was a rook, so you got to know that they got to get their first catch it. And so when he walked up to the car, I said, "What did I do, ma'am? I don't want you to be upset. Baby, breathe. Just breathe, right? Because you get ready to make me nervous."
yeah,
And when he said, "Well, you were 3 miles over the speed limit," I said, "3?" I said, "Man, I thought y'all gave us 5 miles over. What you doing?" And I had him laughing so much he forgot to write me a ticket.
yeah,
But I needed him. I saw the nervousness in him. And I want people to really understand all cops are not walking in a place of bravado.
right.
They want to go home too. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean that's huge, because a lot of times, people are already just mad, right? Because it's an inconvenience.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be pulled over, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants a ticket. Nobody wants to go to jail. Bottom line,
Right.
And so when you walk into that situation, like you're in your car, you know what you got in there. You know what your mindset is. We're walking up to an unknown. And
Right.
I get it. That's true on both sides because you don't know what type of officer is walking up to your car.
Very
Right.
true.
And,
Mm-hmm.
I acknowledge that because it's a lot of things that has happened that shouldn't have, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, every officer, every car is walking up to an unknown. We
Yeah.
don't know at that point if you got warrants. We don't know if today is that day for you and you just absolutely are not willing to go back to jail. We
Right. Right.
don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you got somebody who's new to the career field and they're learning all these things and they're trying to take all this in, they're already nervous because they don't want to mess up. right?
Right.
And then they don't want to do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing or
Mm-hmm.
agitate you, but you're already feeling away because you never wanted to be pulled over anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
now your
Mm-hmm.
anger mixed with their nervousness can kind of make for a difficult
And it creates a
situation,
situation.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so I just always encourage people like, hey, let's just give each other a little bit of grace.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
Because I wouldn't be here if you hadn't did what you did, and
Right.
then if
And it
you
ain't
just
my fault that
automatically,
I had to get called for you.
right,
Right.
you know,
And that's the thing. Accountability is
huge, huge,
huge on both sides of the coin.
yes,
Be accountable for your actions. As you were speaking, I was thinking about the importance of walking up on a situation and not knowing. So I want to pivot just a little bit to that. I'm a conceal and carry. So if I'm pulled over, I'm going to automatically have my license, my conceal and carry, and be like, I got this 9 in the glove compartment. Is that the appropriate way to handle that, to make preparation, or do you have any advice to give so that everybody remains safe?
yeah. So I always tell people, the best thing to do is always have your hands on the steering wheel, right? Because we're trained that hands kill. If I can't see your hands, now we got a
Mm,
situation,
didn't
right?
know that. Okay.
So, you put your hands on the steering wheel where they're visible. I'll tell you, hey, I need to see your license and your insurance. In your case, you say, hey, my insurance is in the glove box, but I also have a weapon in the glove box. Now
Mm-hmm.
we can work through that, right?
Okay.
But if you don't disclose that and then you open the glove box and I see a gun bouncing around, I'm like, whoa, don't go in there. And now
Mm-hmm.
you're like, well, don't, I'm sorry. It's like, whoa, we ain't got to go that fast.
Right.
But if I would have already known, I could have told you, well, hey, let's
Mm-hmm.
take a different route, right? Or
Okay.
even, hey, do you mind if I grab it for you?
Okay.
Like just
Okay.
something simple like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but a lot of times people don't disclose. That's like, if somebody's concealed carrying on their person, and then
Mm-hmm.
we have to ask them out of the vehicle. And then you never say, like, hey, I got a weapon on my person. But you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, I don't want to get out of the car. I don't want to. And then when we get you out and now we find the weapon,
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of times, again, it goes back to communication.
Mm-hmm.
Communication can avoid escalation.
Yeah. Ooh, say that again.
Right? So communication can avoid escalation.
Yes.
I
Yes.
want to be able to tell you exactly what I'm doing. I want you to be able to tell me exactly what you're doing. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's been times I've walked up to cars, people have had their hands out the window or on the steering wheel, and I'm like, hey, this is what I pulled you over for. Is it any weapons in the vehicle? And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
no. Okay, well, relax. If it ain't no weapons in here, relax and give me what I need, and let's
Mm-hmm.
go on handle business and both going about our way.
Right. And I think that's so appropriate. I know, as you know, going through training and staying on top of training as a as a gun owner, it's so important for us to understand, one, the laws of carrying in your state, understand that you have a right to carry, but on the safe side, the communication avoids escalation. I love that. We need to put that on a t-shirt somewhere because
Yeah.
it's so true. Effective communication can avoid escalation. But I'm gonna flip the script for a minute.
Yeah.
What if you're trying to communicate, but the bravado of the officer, because you know how we see all these videos, I'm the officer, you do what I say. And it's like, dude, you're breaking so many laws right now. What would be some suggestions on that you can offer to, you know, that person, the resident, um, when they are interacting with an officer who may be on a having an ego moment?
Yeah. So people hate it, but just stay calm. All right. Because if they're on a trip and then you get on one, in that moment, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna lose.
I got
Right?
you.
Either you're gonna get tickets, you're gonna go to jail, whatever the case may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to realize you got to be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish, which is one, leave the scene alive, and two, leave it with as little paperwork as possible,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
You
got
know,
you. Okay.
because if I pulled you over and you got 4 or 5 violations, am I gonna write you for one, or are we gonna escalate the situation? I'm gonna write you for all 5.
Got you. Okay.
You know, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, hey, let's bring it down. So if you got an
Mm-hmm.
officer that's on the trip, just stay as calm as you can. Yes, no, here you go. Just again have that line of communication, but just try your best to be level headed, because the place to dispute it is not on the side of the road. It's in the courtroom, and
Love it.
every piece of paper comes with a court date.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, make it to the court date. That's the best advice, because, and I actually just did a video on this a couple weeks ago. When you have a citizen who feels like they have been wronged by police, it's protocols in place, right?
Mm.
File those formal complaints. Keyword formal. Because if
Yeah.
you just call and you get on that phone and you cuss, and they gonna hang up and be like, well, that probably didn't happen. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But when
Mm-hmm.
you go down there and you articulate what happened and you fill out that formal complaint, that has to be investigated. They gonna pull that footage, they gonna look into that entire interaction. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's how we make the change. Because if once that formal complaint is founded, that
Mm-hmm.
goes into that officer's employee folder. And then so when
Mm.
we start looking in them folders and start seeing all these complaints, now we can take action. But we
Right.
can't just fire somebody because you called and said a couple cuss words because you was upset and then you hung up the phone. They gonna
Mm-hmm.
be back on the street doing it to the next person.
Right. Right.
So we gotta use the channels that's in place. We gotta make the system work for us. It's there. It
Mm-hmm.
works. We just
Mm-hmm.
gotta be patient and make it work.
That makes so much sense. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people dislike going through the formalities. One, because they are fearful of retaliation, right?
Right.
When you go and you make that complaint, and or this is the big guy in the community or whatever, their fear of retaliation is real. How do you help citizens to understand? People, humans are going to be human, people are going to go on ego trips or whatever, but what can citizens do if they feel like um, the blue network is retaliating against them?
So
I know
here's
that's tough.
the thing. No, it is tough, but the thing is, we have to have a honest mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all cops aren't bad.
That's
All
it.
cops aren't good, right?
That's it. Mm-hmm.
If one of my buddies called me and said, "Hey, this lady filed a complaint on me, pull her over," I'm gonna tell him to get the bleep off my phone.
Right, right, right.
You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that Hollywood is the biggest recruiter for law enforcement. Right? People see all this stuff on TV and they think that it just happens that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody solves a case in 45 minutes. I love Law and Order. Nobody solves the case in
Right.
45 minutes.
Right.
And so just thinking that like all of us are just out here in this network of like, hey, this person filed a complaint, let's go out here and
Mhm.
get them. It's like, no, because chances are we want to know if that officer actually wronged you. That way we can be aware.
Mm,
That way we can
okay,
help to get rid of them, right? So when
got you.
people be like, oh, there's no such thing as a good cop because they don't report the bad cops.
Yeah, I
Here's,
dispute that every time.
here's the honest truth.
Mhm.
Bad cops don't do bad things in front of good cops because they know that they'll get reported,
That's so good.
right? And
Yeah.
so the people that are around me, they're like-minded people. They view
Mhm.
policing the way that I view policing. The people that don't, they're not around me. Like
Mhm.
they're not on my stops. I'm probably not on their stops. So there's not typically a chance for me to see them misbehave.
Got you. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So I can't report something that I don't see.
Mhm.
And if you see me in Walmart and say, "Hey, Officer Owens, this officer did XYZ," I'm gonna tell you, "Hey, here's the steps on how to file a formal complaint." You talking to me in Walmart is not a formal complaint. It's not
Right.
that I don't want to help you, but I want you to do it the right way so that you can get the results that you wish.
Mhm.
You
That
know?
makes so much sense, because yes, Hollywood, TikTok, social media in general
Yes.
can paint pictures. It even happens in the mental health world, because you got it's so much bad information flowing out there from the mental health side of things. And I'm pretty sure every genre of employment has bad things flowing. Um, so it's so very true, following the protocols. And I know, and this is going to be, this part of the conversation going to be a little bigger than us, because we know what's going on in America, and so many laws right now that are being challenged, and things of that nature. But following the rule of the law, following the standards will save lives, I believe. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And that goes back to the earlier question of like, what can we do if we're facing retaliation? Well, follow the law. Don't give them a
Mm-hmm.
reason to pull you over. Like
Mm-hmm.
don't speed, don't drive on a bad license and all that stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of limits what they can do. And then
Yeah.
if you're definitely doing the speed limit, and then they pull you over, that helps you already.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing something wrong, can we really deem it as retaliation, or did I see you commit a traffic violation and I
Mm-hmm.
pulled you over?
That's
Right?
that.
So that's why I say we have to step outside of ourselves and be honest
Mm-hmm.
and have that level of accountability, because I think a lot of times people think what accountability looks like is if I pull you over and I walk up to your car and I say, "Hey, I pulled you over for speeding." You're like, "Yep, I sure was." No, no, no. That's not what I mean. I mean, don't be angry. Don't get online and make a video saying all
Mm-hmm.
police are bad and F12 and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
you were actually wrong, right?
Right. Right.
And so definitely knowing the laws and knowing what you can and can't do and what you should and shouldn't do are huge factors.
Oh
And
yeah.
and just a little tidbit of information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because you say I know my rights, don't mean you do.
Baby.
Right?
I I keep seeing all of these pieces of footage, actually from the officer's camera. I know my rights, and then I'm trying to clean up what I want to
Right. Right. Here's what I'll tell you. It
say.
in my experience, 99% of the time when a person says I know my rights, they in
They
fact do
don't.
not. you know, and I
Mm.
always take that as an opportunity to say, okay, well, here's what here's what you need to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's even been times, and I mean, people are probably gonna think I'm an asshole, right? But there's been times where it's been like somebody say, "I know my rights," and I'm like, "No, you don't, because if you did, you wouldn't have told me."
Come on now.
Right?
And see,
You know what I'm
I
saying?
need those kind of police there to be like, you're playing yourself, right? I
Right.
ain't gonna let you play in my face. So I
Right.
ain't gonna let you play in your face. Because here's what the law actually says.
Right.
Because I, people will take a sliver of what they believe is truth and try to narrate a story of its law.
Yeah. And so I'll give you an example of that. Now,
Okay.
don't beat me up too bad. But earlier you said, like I thought y'all gave us 5, right?
I know
That's
that
a myth.
I know that's not the truth, but
Right?
but you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a lot of people that really believe that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like the limit is the limit, is the cap. It's not
Right.
a suggestion. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a maybe. It's like if it's
Mm-hmm.
70, it's 70. Anything
Mm-hmm.
over. And this is coming from a person who has received the ticket for going 72 in a 70, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I get it. It
Mm-hmm.
sucked. I was mad
Mm-hmm.
as hell. I really
Right.
was. But there's certain things out there that are just myths, and we have to like just step outside of ourselves and say, hey, you know what? Let me do my research on this. Yes, I saw a video on TikTok, but let me do my own research. That way I know, instead of just getting out here and trying it. And now I'm in a situation that I never wanted to be
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in.
That's so true. And people, the biggest word for me today is accountability,
Yeah.
because nobody can create situations where laws are broken outside of you except for you.
Right.
You have to be a willing participant in breaking the law, from my perspective, because I'm one about accountability, what your actions are, and things of that nature. So I'll say this to the audience: before you get angry at the situation, ask yourself first, well, what did I actually do? Even when that officer comes up, I'm like you. If you coming up and you with a bad attitude, I remember being pulled over, super speeder, knew I was wrong, knew I was wrong. And so when I saw the officer, I went ahead and pulled over. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Listen, my son is in Afghanistan. I promise you, I wasn't paying no attention to the speed, because as I'm hearing bombs dropping, and he's saying, 'Mom, I gotta go, I gotta go,' my adrenaline rushed. and I hit the gas pedal. I said, so bro, whatever you finna write me, I'm just gonna take it and I'm gonna pay it. I ain't gonna even fight it. He was like, man, I'm not gonna even write it at what you was going. But can you slow down? I'm gonna get you about 5 miles over. But I
Yeah.
had to own it. I,
Yeah.
I literally had to own it in that moment, and I'm so appreciative, that he understood where I was coming from, um, because it was a tough time. If you ain't never been in that situation, you hearing this bomb dropping, your kid is in
Yeah.
it, and adrenaline. But I could have been angry. I could have been angry at him being in war. I could have been angry at so many things. We got to be accountable for ourselves. And to me, that's the biggest message today. Be
It is.
accountable.
It is. There's and that, and my my perspective is that comes with a certain level of maturity.
Okay. I
Because we
can
got
accept
so
that.
many people who are just out here just doing whatever and they feel like it don't apply to them and it don't matter. And it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
no, like that's not the way of the world. And when you mature
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, you will realize that,
Mm-hmm.
so
It does come from maturity. I also think, like you said, busting up the myths. I think that within the community, changing the story of all police are bad. Um, like you said, F12 took me a long time to understand what that meant. I had to get my kids to explain that to me, as well as all of these, you know, ideologies from even on the blue side, where all black people are bad, all black people are breaking laws, and all this kind of stuff. We have to change the stories and re-narrate our truth. How do you help the community to do that?
um I think it starts with a level of honesty.
Okay.
Essentially, a, a lot of times when I've had people that were just so upset about the police, and I'll just be like, hey, tell me what happened. And
Mm-hmm.
then they'll start telling me this story about, well, this one time something happened to their cousin or this other person. I'm
Mm.
like, no, no, no. I want you to tell me what happened with you,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because all this residual hate is unfair. You know what I'm saying? Like, you tell
Mm-hmm.
me what happened to you that created
Mm-hmm.
this situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to speak from a lived experience,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise you're not speaking from a place of fact, right? Because if
So good.
9 times out of 10, your cousin didn't tell you the whole story.
Come on now.
They told you the part that made them look good, so y'all will get together and get some bond money and get them out. You see what I'm saying?
Tell it.
So you
Mm-hmm.
can't be mad at me because you got a piece of a story,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so again, like, just having that level of honesty, and from both sides, because I think that we need to admit when we mess up as well,
Right.
you
Right.
know, and
Mm-hmm.
um and so for the public, just saying like, hey, you know what, understanding, because that's another thing that I think has kind of created this little standstill that we're at, right?
Yeah.
It's just people not knowing and understanding the law. And a good
Mm-hmm.
example of that is, let's just say you got an officer involved shooting.
Mm-hmm.
That person had a knife. That
Mm-hmm.
person was charging at the officer.
Mm-hmm.
The number one question is, well, why didn't they tase him?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, taser is less lethal. A knife is lethal. You
Mm-hmm.
meet lethal with lethal. All right. Only thing I got
Mm.
is a gun. That's lethal.
Mhm.
Everything
Mhm.
else on me, the baton, the spray, the taser, all that's less lethal. That's not
Mhm.
an option when it
Mhm.
comes to a knife. That's not an option for making it home.
Got
Right.
you.
And
Okay.
so when you take that into account, and then you'll get these people that say, okay, well, I was okay with you shooting them once, but why you shoot them 6 times? Well, why
Mhm.
are you okay with one but not six?
Mhm.
That
Okay,
one
break
could
it
have
down
been
for 'em.
the end all be all, you
Mhm.
know? Um, but knowing like, hey, we're trained to stop the threat, right?
Mhm.
A lot of times adrenaline is pumping. One ain't gonna do the trick, especially if it
Mhm.
ain't square in the head. Right. So,
Cause
and
I've seen some videos of some big brawly guys.
yeah,
You tase them, they get up.
yeah.
You shoot them,
Listen,
they
I'm
get
telling you,
up.
a person on PCP, a taser does nothing but excite
Mm.
them.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that in this particular situation that person has to be shot, but I'm just telling you a taser doesn't work. There's facts. I think the percentage is a taser fails 75% of the time.
Wow. That's
That's
huge.
huge odds when my life is at stake,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because so just I don't want to get too deep into the semantics of it, but a taser, it shoots out two prongs, right?
Mm-hmm.
If one of those prongs doesn't connect with the body, it's not a successful tase,
Got
right?
you.
If
Okay.
they're too close together, it's probably not a successful tase.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If that person is on anything that is an intoxicant or anything like that, it's probably not going to be a successful tase.
Got you. Okay.
And so when you take those things into account, and it's like, hey, I got to make a decision. I need
Mm-hmm.
to make the right decision because I may not get a second chance.
I got and the ultimate goal is everybody go home.
That's it.
That's the ultimate goal, I believe, because I'm not an officer, hadn't been trained to be an officer. But I believe that ultimately it's no different than being in war. Everybody needs to go home that can go home. And
That's it.
so thank you for explaining the lethality and judging from a knife versus a taser, judging from proximity and
Yeah.
distance between you and the suspect or that person that you're dealing with. I won't say suspect, but the person that you're dealing with, because you do have to, I believe, it would seem that you have to make quick decisions in the heat of the moment. And I believe that adrenaline can flow on both sides
Yeah, for sure.
at any given time. And so, what would be the resounding message that you would want everybody to walk away with today?
Uh, be accountable for your actions. Just extend some grace. The same grace
Extend
that you
some
want.
grace.
Just extend some.
Yeah. And that's a true message because the truth is the only human that we can control is ourselves.
That's it.
And being able to understand that. I just had a question pop in my head.
Yeah.
When um, officers become officers, is there any specific training that officers get to handle mental health crisis?
So every academy is a basic academy, and I think
Okay.
that's another misconception is that people feel like you're supposed to go to the academy and come out knowing everything. They
Mm,
just give you the baseline, right?
okay.
Every day at this job is training, right?
Okay.
You should
Okay.
be learning something new every day. Like no two situations are the same, no two traffic stops are the same, no two calls for service are the same, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
always going to be a different factor, even if it's just simply the people involved. It's
Right.
always going to be something different. Um, so there's a baseline given in the academy about
Mm-hmm.
mental health crisis and such, but that's one of the things that unfortunately falls on the officer to further their education. The
Okay.
department will put on trainings, or there'll be, trainers in your area that you can go to, but that's one of the things that's not really understood as overall, like just not even in policing. I feel like as a nation, we don't really understand mental health the way that we
Right.
should, and we
Right.
don't do things to get that
To
better.
further educate.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so me, like I'll say, like I think that because I do have a different perspective on mental health, and I think that we should very well be taking it serious. I feel like the first time an officer has a mental health situation, or is gives acknowledgement to the resources that are available, it shouldn't be the first time they have a critical incident. We should already be
Mm.
aware of those resources. That way,
Mm-hmm.
if and when an incident occurs, we can take the proper steps and we can already have some level of preparedness.
That's
Um,
good.
but
That's
for
real
me,
good.
yeah, for me, I just, if there's a mental health training available, I take it.
Nice.
Like, so I want to know, like, what can I do? How can I help? How can I better serve? Because at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, like, not only does that better help the community, but it also better helps me because these same skills I get to use in my own life, right? I
Exactly. That was
have
going to be my next
flexibility.
question. How do you debrief after especially a really tough day, tough calls, because it has to wear on your mental awareness as well.
Yeah. So I talk, I mean, that's the thing. You can't hold it in. You can't think that you can do it on your own. So you
Hmm.
gotta get it out. Talk therapy is like a huge component of me being
Mm,
the best
okay.
version of me. So I strongly support that. I encourage any and everybody to do it. And
Yeah.
you just don't realize how much just simply talking can take a weight off you. But I also do a couple different things. I do a podcast with some guys. Um,
What's the
on
name of?
so it's called Childish Games with a Z. Uh,
Okay.
so we
Childish
got a
Game.
website. You can go to
Mhm.
our website, check us out. We got merch. I got shirts,
I
all types
saw
of
that.
stuff.
I'm
Uh,
gonna have to get one. I'm gonna have to
yeah,
get
yeah, I gotta get you. So the shirt says, and this is what I live by. This is my mantra. It says, "Kindness is free. If you are not spreading kindness, what are you doing?"
Love it. Love
Right?
it. We gonna get together because I need me
Yeah,
one.
for sure. And so look, it's available in black and white because the
Hmm.
message itself is black and white. There's no room for gray.
Yeah, I love
That's
that.
how I put it out there. But so I do that, and then every Wednesday on my TikTok, I do a
Hmm.
Wellness Wednesday live at 11 a.m. where we
Okay.
talk about a variety of different mental health topics. We've talked about everything from emotional intelligence to goal setting, trauma, all
Hmm.
types of stuff, right? And
All right,
so
you
it's
got to
just
throw the TikTok name out there now.
yeah, so it's ofc.owens on TikTok, Instagram, trying to build my Instagram. I'm not really big into social media. I'm trying to get there. And so
Okay.
I started with my TikTok first, and when they were trying to go do away with it, I
Hmm.
started the Instagram.
Okay.
And so I'm still trying to learn all that.
That's what's up. But at least you're putting it out there. You're giving
Right,
yourself the opportunity to give another perspective of policing,
right.
of the humanism associated with policing. So y'all go out and like her pages, follow her page. I'm telling you, I may not be on there at 11 o'clock when you go live, but I'm going to get it before the day is over because it comes up in my notifications.
Yeah.
Thank you so, so, so much, Officer Owens. I'm telling you, I believe so many people are going to be enlightened and brought a level of awareness along with the humanistic side of policing.
Yeah, and
Any
that's what it
last
is.
words?
I just try to be a living example, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like it's hard to just go out here and not lead by example, especially when you're in a profession like mine where it's just so many eyes on you all the time.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
be a lived example and just show people that it can be done. I can treat you well, you can treat me well, and we can talk about it. Anything can be talked about. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it
That's
out.
what's up. And I'm gonna wrap with your signature line on your email.
Yeah.
Stay childish, y'all.
Stay child.
Everything doesn't have to be serious. We can take moments to breathe without reacting first. We can become focused. We can be accountable for our own actions. Keep that grace going for yourself as well as other. But when it's all said and done, stay childish. Stay child. Every time I see that, it just makes my heart smile.
Yeah.
Stay childish. So until the next episode of Authentically Peculiar with Marcia, be good, stay strong, stay focused. And I'm going to steal this for the moment. Stay childish. We'll see you soon.